Hey guys, welcome to the Ultimate Personal Trainer podcast with Paul. Today we're going to be going a little bit into the training side of things. So we're going to be talking about compound versus isolation exercises. And this is a huge topic in the fitness industry because so many people have really strong beliefs around this. If you're into the functional movement scene, you're really going to be all about compounds. You think compound exercises should be the vast majority, if not all, of your client exercises, and that isolation exercises are essentially useless, yet you'll prescribe TVA and diaphragmatic rehab. On the flip side of that, you've got the isolation crowd who want to isolate every single fiber of the iliac portion of the sternal lat, even though that's not a real thing, and they'll avoid exercises like chin-ups because they're not optimal for getting the optimal neuromuscular profile in an exercise. And both parties are absolutely wrong, in my opinion. I've actually been part of both parties. So when I started off training, I was a functional based trainer. I believed stupid things like you had to do 10 chin-ups before you started doing bicep curls. And I've also been part of the isolationist fraction where looking at how can I target my upper medial lateral glute med with particular exercises to get the most regional hypertrophy there. So I have the best stimulus to fatigue ratio of any exercise. So I want to unpack each of those things in this podcast so we can make better decisions in our programming for clients and then also answer their questions more effectively. So isolations work better in a number of certain circumstances. The first one is when you want to maximize regional hypertrophy. You can do chin-ups and you can do bicep curls, and bicep curls will essentially do a better job in that particular outcome. Depending on what you want to achieve in your training, that should be your key indicator at looking at what you prescribe. Now, where this could be wrong is if the client has very, very limited time. So if you want to do isolation exercises for the chest, like a cable chest fly, a deltoid exercise, such as the cable front raise, and then some tricep exercises, one for the long head, one for the short head, you may as well do a bench press because that's going to tick all those boxes in a shorter period of time. Where the bench press will fall short is that it will lead to preferential hypertrophy in one area based on that individual's biomechanics. This doesn't mean the bench press is a bad exercise. It just may mean for some individuals, based on, say, sternal shape, length of arms, origin, insertion of different muscles, that the bench may not be the ideal exercise. So what we need to do is really not get married to the idea of any exercises and then look at the context and the situation that we're in and use that to decide if we're going to use a compound movement or we're going to use an isolation movement for that particular client at that particular time. Isolation exercises are generally going to be better for hypertrophy if you're looking for regional specific hypertrophy and if you have a ton of exercise time to do stuff. If you don't, deadlifts, bench press, squats, all that kind of stuff are totally fine to do. They will not get the best hypertrophy outcomes, but they're sure as hell going to grow muscle. You don't not grow muscle if you can deadlift 5 plates aside for reps, squat 4 plates aside, and bench 3 plates aside while do chin-ups with, say, 50% of your body weight attached. You will be strong, but you'll definitely gain muscle, but you'll have some glaring muscle imbalances as well from a physique standpoint. So that's where we need to balance it out. We also need to look at the early stages of rehab. So a lot of the time people say use compound exercises for rehab. It's not really ideal there to do the same thing and do it with a crappy movement pattern because you're avoiding loading a joint due to pain there. And this is something that's very, very popular now in the exercise physiology world, where it's just like do what you can and work for the range of motion that you have. Why do that when you can actually isolate that tissue better with a different exercise, promote a higher degree of blood flow, a higher degree of strengthening, a higher degree of recovery, and be very specific with what you're doing rather than using a generalistic approach. This is something that takes time and skill to learn and do, and this is why it makes it worthwhile. A lot of people will hurt their back deadlifting, and a lot of people will say, let's get back into deadlifting, okay? Let's just go straight back in deadlifting using a lightweight and see what happens. That is not the best way to do it. You could look at isolating the glutes, the lower back, and the hamstrings, for example, and building up strength across those different tissues and building up resilience and improving movement patterns in the absence of pain, and then you can go back to deadlifting and get better outcomes. And then finally, the last one that we want to look at in terms of context is when calories are super low in the cutting phase. Okay, so when we're trying to lose weight, the general rule of thumb that we have always done is more is more. Okay, so more of a deficit, more exercise, more output, more NEAT, more of everything, right? And that isn't really the best approach for sustainability in a lot of people. Generally, what I recommend is that when you are in this severe cutting phase, so you're cutting your calories and you're trying to lose more weight, we're not trying to use our resistance training as a stimulus to lose more body fat. It's a stupid thing to do because resistance training doesn't have the high energy output, and the actual difference in energy output from doing squats to leg extensions, for example, isn't significantly different in terms of the results that it's going to get us. What is significantly different is the load it has on other tissues such as tendons, joints, ligaments, and other soft tissue structures. The exercises like squats, deadlifts, bench presses, overhead presses, chin-ups, while fantastic exercises, are highly fatiguing by nature. So if someone's in a severe calorie deficit, their risk of injury is higher. Not only are they going to build less muscle because they've got less available fuel to do that, but what's going to happen is they're not going to recover from the other parts of exercise as well. When we train, we don't just train our muscles. We train many different systems, many energy systems, and many different structures of the body undergo stress and need fuel to recover from that stress. So what we want to do when we're in the deep stages of a cut is actually focus mainly on isolation exercises that are safer, have a better safety profile, and a higher stimulus to fatigue ratio because we simply cannot recover from the volume of exercise that we're doing. So guys, hopefully that's given you some insight onto your selection of compound versus isolation exercises. Both of them absolutely have their place. It's about the intelligent application of those exercises, whether it's compound or isolation, in the right program, for the right person, at the right time, that's going to make you a better coach than the other coaches out there. Thanks heaps, guys. I'll see you soon.